You wake up, you make your coffee, you check your phone, and somewhere between the weather app and your morning scroll, you miss the headline that just changed your financial life. A war broke out 7,000 miles away, and by the time you pull up to the gas station on your way to work, you're already paying for it. That's not a metaphor. That's what's happening right now. The Middle East is on fire, and I'm not here to talk geopolitics. I'm here to talk about your wallet. Because whether you care about foreign policy or not, this conflict right now in 2026 is reaching directly into the pocket of every average American earning a normal paycheck. And most people have no idea how deep it goes. Let's start with the most obvious one, gas. The national average has already jumped 65 cents per gallon since February alone, and analysts aren't being quiet about what comes next. Another 25 to 40 cents every single week the fighting continues. Think about that. You're commuting to work, you're dropping the kids off, you're running errands on Saturday. That tank you fill up every week, it's quietly bleeding you out, a few extra dollars at a time. And if prices hit the $4.50, $5 range that experts are now warning about, that Friday night dinner out just became a Netflix night in. That weekend road trip, canceled. But here's where it gets really interesting and really uncomfortable. Most people think this is just a gas problem. Fill up less, drive less, problem managed. But oil doesn't just go into your car. Oil goes into everything. Your plastic containers, your medications, your food packaging, the fertilizer that grew your vegetables, the synthetic fabric in your shirt. The moment oil becomes expensive and hard to move, a shockwave travels through the entire economy, and it arrives at your checkout counter weeks later, disguised as higher prices on things you never connected to a war in the Middle East. And then there's the shipping crisis nobody's talking about loudly enough. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway that carries roughly 20 million barrels of oil per day, is now functionally impaired. The Red Sea, which was already closed through most of 2025 because of Houthi attacks, is not reopening anytime soon. The cargo ships that used to take the fast, cheap route from Asian factories to American ports, they're rerouting, taking weeks longer, paying massively higher insurance premiums. And guess who absorbs that extra cost at the end of the chain? Not the shipping company, not the retailer. You, standing in the aisle staring at a price tag that's gone up again. Goldman Sachs is already projecting that inflation could jump back to 3% by the end of 2026. Now I know what you're thinking. That's only a 0.5% increase. How bad can it be? But here's the thing. You're not a spreadsheet. You're a real person who's been watching wages stay flat while prices climbed for 3 straight years. Real spending power from middle-income households hasn't grown since 2023. So when inflation ticks back up, it's not landing on solid ground. It's landing on a household that's already stretched. That's why surveys are showing something really telling right now. 2/3 of American consumers say they've already changed their spending habits because of this conflict. 45% have cut non-essential spending. 36% are actively hunting for discounts they didn't bother hunting for before. 42% say they're going to eat out less. That last one sounds small until you realize what it means for the restaurant owner on your street, the barista at your local coffee shop, the yoga studio around the corner. Every dollar you pull back ripples outward and hits someone else's income. The economy is an ecosystem, and when fear sets in, everything contracts together. But the cruelest part, interest rates. The Federal Reserve had finally been moving toward cutting rates, giving millions of Americans hope that they could refinance that expensive mortgage, lower that car payment, get some breathing room. That hope just got a lot harder to hold on to, because when oil prices surge and inflation climbs back up, the Fed can't justify cutting. They have to hold, maybe even raise. And for a middle-income family sitting on a variable-rate mortgage or a stack of credit card debt, that's not abstract monetary policy. That's a very real bill, every single month. Here's what no one in the mainstream media wants to say plainly. This war hits differently depending on how much money you have. The wealthy have buffers, investment portfolios, cash reserves, assets that actually gain value when oil spikes. They absorb the shock. The middle class doesn't have that.
The middle class has a checking account, a mortgage, and a tank that needs to be filled twice a week. The wealthy can hedge, you just have to pay. Economists are already using a word that should make everyone nervous: stagflation. Growth slowing down, prices going up, at the same time. The 1970s version of this was brutal for ordinary American families, and the conditions for a repeat are quietly assembling themselves right now. So what do you do with all of this? The honest answer is that there's no simple fix for a middle-income household trying to outmaneuver a geopolitical war. But awareness matters. Understanding why your grocery bill is higher, why refinancing feels further away, why your paycheck doesn't stretch the way it used to, that's not just information, it's power. It's the difference between panicking and planning. A war 7,000 miles away doesn't stay over there. It travels through pipelines and shipping lanes and supply chains and interest rate decisions until it arrives quietly and without announcement at your kitchen table. And now you know exactly how it got there.